Everybody ready? We have one here that's almost done.
I'm almost there.
Almost ready. All right. We're waiting on you then.
All right. No pressure.
Let me know when you're ready.
20 seconds.
20 seconds. All right. You might have a refreeze.
I am good to go whenever.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's already.
Oh, we go. Oh, yeah, this is her. Okay, I thought I saw another camera there. Okay, everybody ready?
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. Come on up, Chief. Good evening. I'm Hernando County Sheriff Al Nienhuis. For your records, it's spelled Nienhuis, and it's pronounced Nienhuis. And I have the fire chief with me. I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Paul Hasselmeyer, Fire Chief and Public Safety Director for Hernando County Fire Rescue. Paul, P-A-U-L, last name Hasselmeyer, H-A-S-E-N-M-E-I-E-R.
Okay, Paul. As you all know, this evening about 5 p.m., a little bit north of where we are now, which is a little south of Star Road and Irma Road, and we had a call of simultaneously of fire and shots being fired and people may be injured. Of course, deputies and fire rescue responded, lights and sirens to the scene. Found kind of a hectic scene, to say the least. We did have a building that was burning. We have since, that was not the most serious issue that we had to deal with. We had one individual that as we got here was being evacuated, did have a gunshot wound, was taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, there was another victim out in the open near the scene, and it took some time for us to get a rescue vehicle here and get that individual rescued. That person has also been transported to a local trauma center. We don't know the condition of the second person. I believe the first person may have non-life-threatening injuries. We also believe that the suspect, who we have identified as Steve Rusa, he did shoot at other individuals in the area, neighbors, and we're not sure exactly what happened. What we've been doing for the last couple hours is doing our best to, number one, evacuate the individual that was injured. Also try to account for all the neighbors and make sure we have everybody accounted for. And I think we've come very close to accounting for everybody, so we don't believe there are any more victims. And then our focus turned to making sure that our suspect was still in the area. And fortunately, we were able to get a drone in the house and confirm that the individual is in there and was moving around. So now it has turned from an active shooter with not much information to a barricaded suspect. And the victims, the two that we definitely know of, have both been transported, and the scene is much calmer now. The fire, we believe, pretty much extinguished itself. We don't think it moved to any other buildings, but again, that was not something. We think it was a barn that was on fire, which also complicated the rescue a little bit. But I don't know if I can answer a whole lot more questions, or if you have any questions of the chief, but I'll be happy to do my best. We're not sure. Obviously, we haven't even we've been talking to a couple witnesses. We're not sure what precipitated the shots or any arguments. That's going to be ongoing, and of course everything I've told you thus far is subject to change, because it is still a very dynamic scene. We do not have the individual in custody yet, but I wanted to give you an update and let the public know that we have identified the person as still being in the house. So we weren't sure if he was in there. We had reports that he'd gone back in the house, but obviously in situations like this, people can get away from you and you aren't always sure where they are. But fortunately, we have identified him as being in the house, so we don't believe there's any danger to the general public at this moment. So if anybody have any questions?
To clarify, the two people, were they shot and were they residents of that home?
They were shot, and they were either residents of that home or neighbors. I'm not sure exactly. I think they may have been acquaintances. And then at least one individual in the home, I think, was shot at, but was not hit. So it was a mess, and detectives are interviewing people as we speak. But again, our focus is evacuating victims and making sure that we have the suspect contained. So that was our primary focus. The rest is going to take hours, if not days, to figure out exactly what happened. So.
Is Rusa known to your office?
What's that?
Is Rusa known to your office?
Is this person known? Actually, very, very little interaction with that individual. We think he may have had a DUI sometime in the past. I can't recall when they said, but it was not somebody that is well known to us, that's for sure.
Is his wife or anyone else in the house with him?
I don't want to give away any victim information from Marcy's Law, but suffice it to say that right now, as far as we know, everybody's out of the house except the suspect.
Can you talk about why not go in with force at this point?
Well, right now there's no hurry because nobody's in danger, and we'd prefer if he would give himself up. We want to take him into custody without anybody else getting injured. That's our primary goal. We have forced entry into the house, but now we're in the process of trying to establish communications with him, and that may be going on as we speak right now. Hopefully convince him to give up. We obviously weren't sure what his condition was when we breached the house, but we have since determined that he is alive and that we're trying to set up negotiations with him.
And you said you said he was heavily armed earlier. Do you know how many guns, what type of guns?
No, obviously that's going to, it's going to be, that may be a day or two at least before. We did have intelligence that there are handguns and rifles. I believe the statement was hunting rifles, but I can't be 100% sure of that. But and the intelligence also was that there was a relatively significant amount of ammunition in the house. So obviously it certainly made it a lot more challenging for my deputies and SWAT team to evacuate that one individual who was out in the open.
And you said you got a drone in the house. How did that work?
We breached the door and sent the drone in.
Like a flying drone?
Yes.
Okay.
Any ideas about the fire and how that was related to?
We believe he set the fire, but again, that's very, very preliminary, and it's a little bit of conjecture on our part and maybe some witness statements. Obviously, this individual committed some very extreme acts, including, we believe, setting the fire, shooting at least 2 people, shooting at least 1 or more others. So it was a very extreme, chaotic scene there for quite some time. So.
Who made the 911 call? Was it a neighbor, a witness?
I can't release any identification of the 911 caller, and I don't even think I've heard exactly who called in. We may have gotten several calls for all I know, because it was as I said, it was pretty chaotic there for a little while.
Is the home was in his own home, and was it his barn that was on fire?
I believe he's in his own home now. I can't verify that. And as far as the barn, I'm not sure who owns that. It may be on the same property, or it may be adjacent to his home.
And have neighbors specified whether he's acted out in the past or threatened them?
Again, right now, our focus was on rescuing the injured and trying to get this individual safely into custody. Interviews are probably occurring as we speak, but I wasn't too concerned about that when at the command post. But
And
that,
once we get him into custody, what charges is he looking at?
they're probably still determining what those are, but obviously they're going to be very, very serious crimes against persons charges once we verify and get witness statements and figure out exactly what happened.
Did he fire upon deputies at all?
I'm sorry, no, fire on deputies, not that we know of. There may have been some shots fired when we were trying to do the rescue, but that's unconfirmed. Obviously, in situations like this, it's very difficult. I think the average person doesn't realize how chaotic things are, but during the rescue, there might have been a couple shots fired, but again, that's not confirmed. But the initial response, I don't believe any deputies were fired upon, at least initially, and I am about 100% sure the deputies did not fire their weapon. Of course, we got to talk to all of them first, but.
His property seems to be pretty big. The 2 victims, were they located on his property or?
I believe at least, well, one victim when we got there was on the way out, being transported out by somebody else. The victim we rescued, I believe, was in a large part of his yard out in the open. Again, that's what made it very challenging to get that person rescued, and person was pretty seriously injured. So I don't know the status right now, but.
Do you know, have you heard estimates of how many shots he fired? Was it
No,
dozens, or?
I don't have any of that information yet. I will tell you a little bit of information as we train fairly regularly with our fire rescue partners. And this was a perfect example of where that came into play. Normally, we don't necessarily need to do this type of rescue. This is the one time when we did. We used our rescue vehicle. We had a couple medics on there who were suited up in some protective gear, covered by our SWAT team, and they were able to go in and do some very, very preliminary treatment of the patient and get that person out so that that person could be transported. So this is a case where it's certainly the partnership between fire rescue and law enforcement was well worth the time we invested in training and getting them some equipment. So.
And recently, I believe Hernando County had an active shooter training for the public. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What's your message to the community? You know, you have this active shooter training, and then you have an active shooter just day or days later.
Yeah, this was a little bit unique compared to what we normally train for. Our training is more geared towards if you're in public and there's an active shooter, but I think you can use the same principles with this is, you know, have situational awareness, have a plan, always be prepared when something could go wrong, and make sure you know where your exits are. Those types of things definitely apply to this as well. But since it was obviously in a residential neighborhood in the area of this individual's home, it made it a little bit unique compared to that type of training. But you never know what your neighbors are capable of sometimes. And as I said, this person, we didn't have a lot of interaction with him from a law enforcement perspective, at least initial research by my crime analysis unit. So I don't know what interaction he may have had with his neighbors prior to this. So.
Sheriff, I know you said that most neighbors have been accounted for. Have residents in the immediate area been been evacuated, or are they
Yeah.
still in their homes? Are you advising people to stay in their homes?
Yeah, what we did is in the immediate area, what we did consider kind of an outer perimeter, we did evacuate everybody out of those homes. We also did what we call a code red or a reverse 911 to let people in that geographic area, particularly initially when we weren't sure, 100% sure he was in the house. We wanted to let neighbors know that in case he did get out of his house and was in the neighborhood, that if they saw anything to give us a call. So we did alert all the neighbors, and of course now we're using our media partners to let everybody know that we believe it's contained and there's no more danger to the public. So.
Has he responded to negotiators yet?
As soon as I verified he was in there and he was moving around, I wanted to get the word out that the public could rest a little easier, that we do have everything contained. So I don't know if he's, obviously they're working very hard on it because, as I said, our goal is to get him out alive and seek justice for the individual, the victims. But so. All right.
Is your armored, I mean, is your vehicle, your rescue vehicle, is it armored?
Our rescue vehicle is definitely a sturdy vehicle. Yes, sir. Yes, it is. It's designed specifically for this type of operation, as well as doing some breaching much safer than it otherwise would if you put your SWAT team right in the funnel of that front door. So, so far, it's worked very well tonight. And it was a good investment. I can tell just for tonight it was a good investment.
In
All
a
right.
situation like this with an active shooter and a fire, what has that been like for all of you responding to it?
Chaotic. It is something, again, we have to make sure that we, regardless of what's going on, we have to prioritize. And our number one priority was safely getting that victim out without causing more victims. Again, we didn't know necessarily where the shooter was, and so once we got the victim out, that's when I started breathing a lot easier. And then when we identified the shooter still being in the house, or who we believe is the shooter, that really calmed things down a little bit. Now we can take our time.
Did he make any kind of response or reaction to the drone when it?
That I don't know. All I heard on the radio that he was confirmed. The drone operator was looking at the picture, confirmed it was him, and that he was moving around. So I don't know. Probably by now, my guess is that they've had some communication with him, but I can't confirm that. So, all right,
Thank you.
Chief, do you have anything you want to add?
We heard two victims have been transported to local hospitals with gunshot wounds. But again, just back out here live, about a mile and a half away, you can see the seriousness of the situation, that these law enforcement officers are keeping people away from the scene. Deputies are also telling people in the immediate area near Irma Road to shelter in place unless told otherwise. So again, this remains a very active and fluid situation. Again, this is the closest we can get to that scene right now as deputies try to negotiate a peaceful surrender with the suspect, Steve Russa. Josh, Jen?
JB here with you live, folks, on WFLA Now. Good evening, good night, wherever you are watching from. A suspect barricaded inside of a home in Brooksville as an active shooter situation unfolds in Hernando County. This is that suspect, a suspect by the name of Steve Russa. Two people have been injured by gunfire and a home set on fire as well. Deputies working through the very active scene north of State Road 50. This all unfolding, of course, north of Tampa here in the Tampa Bay area. A very heavy law enforcement presence. As we can see here, we'll go back to Justin Schecker's shot live, and you can see this is the perimeter that has been established, the edge of that perimeter. We can't go beyond this because of it being a very active situation. Again, this all unfolded this evening as we got word of a heavy law enforcement presence and shots being fired in Brooksville, in Hernando County. We started to get some information from Hernando County Sheriff Al Nienhuis, said that there were casualties reported. And then we found out that there was one and then two people taken to a hospital with gunshot wounds. Nienhuis says that a drone has been sent into the home to establish contact with who is believed to be the suspect in this case. Again, that suspect being Mr. Russa. Nienhuis saying that Russa is accused of some extreme acts of violence. The exact situation and as far as the potential motive in this case, why this all unfolded, that's unclear at this time. What they're trying to do right now, of course, is to ensure that there isn't any further incident at the home in Brooksville, again, north of State Road 50. So our team here at WFLA will be keeping you posted on air and online. You can see the heavy rain is falling in Brooksville. It's coming down pretty hard there at the moment. Looking here at radar, and yeah, there's considerable rain right now in Hernando County. So very active situation, one that involved both the Hernando County Sheriff's Office as well as fire rescue in the area because of the structure fire that they had to respond to. A barn also impacted in this incident as well. And again, Stephen Ruza, who was believed to be potentially, they didn't know exactly where Mr. Ruza was. They had an inclination that he might have gone back to the house. Neheis's last update, he said that he might have gone back into the house, but they were unsure at the time. And they put out this image to let residents in the area know to be on the lookout, because if he's not in the home, he's obviously a potential threat to neighbors in the area. So Rusa is believed to be in the home. He's also believed to be armed and extremely dangerous, multiple firearms inside the home. And as far as how long this could go on, that remains unclear. Neheis saying that they're trying to establish a form of communication, a stable form of communication with the suspect, and hopefully get closer to a potential surrender. We just missed it here on the touchscreen, but an ambulance just went by. Nothing out of the ordinary here as far as the response by authorities in Hernando County. So as soon as we get an update, we're going to share it your way on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. I'll do my very best to answer as many questions as possible, saying hello to our YouTube Live audience, saying hello to our Facebook Live audience as well. And of course, people asking in our comments section about the drone and sending in the drone and not sending in officers or deputies. Of course, this is a very sensitive situation, and you don't want to do anything that could lead to further escalation. Trying, of course, to prevent any additional incidents from unfolding tonight in Hernando County. So just trying to establish some form of non-threatening communication, just a lane of back and forth talk between authorities with the Hernando County Sheriff's Office and with the suspect, who's again believed to be Stephen Ruza, in that house, barricaded inside of that house. As soon as we get any word on whether or not they have established communication with him and whether or not this is something that could be ending peacefully at some point soon, look, we'll try to get any information that we get directly your way on WFLA.com, the WFLA app, as well as on air tonight on WFLA News Channel 8. Of course, as well, you do not want there to be any threat to any of the officers that would breach the building, that would breach the home. Of course, it's about doing things as safely as possible, not just for the suspect, but for law enforcement. And using a drone, of course, is a way that they can get into the home without there being any risk to any law enforcement, any deputies that would be gaining entry to the home itself. We know that the suspects, we know that the victims, not the suspects, the victims in this case have suffered gunshot wounds. Ruza is believed to be the suspect responsible for those injuries. And he's also believed to be responsible for the fire that has forced a response by fire rescue in the area. As far as his condition, that is something that I wasn't able to get any information on. Whether or not he is in, if he has suffered any injuries, if he is in a life-threatening situation. I think right now, Neheis has indicated to us that they are just they're in the information gathering stage right now. They're just trying to get as much information from inside the house as possible. But the fire, of course, has made things a little bit problematic for the response at the scene. As people know, here on stream, you can use hashtag KJB to get my attention in the Facebook Live or YouTube Live comment section. I'll be looking for them here over the next several minutes, but we'll probably be wrapping up our live stream here shortly. Let's show the picture of the scene again. Nope, that's actually the wrong picture. Let's go to this picture. There we go. So there you can see this is the perimeter, as we understand it, is a very large perimeter. It's not as if we can take our camera, point it to the left, and show you the house. It is not within line of sight, we've been told. The perimeter that has been established around this house where this is all unfolding is said to be rather large. And so no vehicles, no individuals will be able to go past this point. And the rain is coming down pretty hard. As you can see, we have our photographers here at the scene. I believe that's Joseph Brown, our photojournalist here at WFLA, who's just trying to keep a clean lens for us to be able to see what's going on, even though he's not within a realistic distance for us to be able to see the actual scene itself. This is, again, the perimeter. Looking for for any comments with hashtag KJB. If not, I'm probably going to be signing off here, folks, in just a minute. We got word of this situation. Amy wants to know, hashtag KJB, when did the situation start? I believe that we got word of this situation shortly after 5 o'clock today. That was when we got an alert. So it was a little bit before that the 911 call was processed, and the first responders were sent to the scene there in Brooksville, again, north of State, I believe it's Irma Road, Irma with an E. Residents are asked to stay indoors unless directed by law enforcement, of course. I believe it was, yes, Irma Road with an E. Irma Road and Star Road, and that is north of 50, State Road 50, there in Brooksville. I mean, it's kind of, it's near, it's east of Weeki Wachee, north of Spring Hill. Just trying to give everybody some, west of the high school there, Central High School. Donna wants to know on Facebook Live, do you know what started this? A call of, well, the initial response was for shots fired, and when deputies got there, there was at least one person with a gunshot wound. Then another victim was near the scene that eventually had to get transported as well. So that was the 911 call that came in, again, for the report of there being shots fired. And then, of course, the discovery of one victim and then a subsequent victim as well. Stacia wants to know, why are people always so shocked by this gun violence? You know, I'll just say that we respond to too many of these, or we cover calls like this all the time. Law enforcement responding to calls like this relatively frequently. Everything's relative, but calls like this are something that we hear about all the time. It's not just in the Tampa Bay area; it's elsewhere in this country as well. You know, people have asked, is this domestic in nature? We don't know exactly the reason for this, as we have a sheriff's office vehicle now pulling in beyond the perimeter that's been established. But this is something that just happens just too often. It's just too frequent. Let it be summer, hashtag KJB. Is he related to the victims? They could not say yet. Crafty Grandma wanting to know the same as well. Heather Bates, hashtag KJB. They say he ran back in the house. Did he shoot the people outside? Exactly where the shots were fired, that I'm unclear about. No, this is not believed to be. Metal Mama wants to know, is he locked in with the victims? Any hostages? This is not believed to be a hostage situation at this time. Again, 2 people injured. A suspect, this suspect here, we'll show him here again, believed to be barricaded inside of the home. They're trying to establish a safe line of communication with him through a drone technology. But no hostages that we know of at this time. People always forget too. It is so common for there to be pets inside the home, and you want to, of course, handle this scene with as much sensitivity as possible to ensure that there's no loss of life. And when I say no loss of life, that goes beyond just us people. And so I don't know whether or not there are pets inside of the home, but it's always something that we're always cognizant of when there is a scene unfolding like this, when you don't know exactly who is in the house, and what the situation inside the house looks like. But that's also something worth pointing out. Carolyn wants to know if I can give a brief update. I'd be happy to. This is the scene. Let's go back to the scene here. I think, nope. Again, I keep hitting the wrong button. Rusty. There's another law enforcement vehicle being allowed past the perimeter. So around 5 o'clock today, we got word of the response of heavy law enforcement presence in Brooksville for what was then described as an active shooter situation. Anytime you have an active shooter situation, of course, it puts us on high alert. We try to do everything that we can as members of the media to get the word out as quickly as possible to ensure that we're covering it, and also to let people know where this is happening so that they can, of course, keep them and their families safe as well. We initially had a report of 1 person injured, and then we also had this image put out. Stephen Russo, who is believed to be a person of interest, who at the time believed to be a person of interest or a possible suspect. We then got word of a second person that was injured, and they didn't know at the time whether or not he was inside the home where this crime scene was unfolding. They didn't know if he was inside of the home. They didn't know if he was on the loose. The reason that they didn't know if he was inside of the home, of course, there was a fire that was also a component in this case at the property. So that, of course, made this a little bit complicated. But upon getting a drone inside, they were able to establish communication with him. They've attempted to establish a back and forth communication with him. They know he's inside the house, is what I'm trying to say. And they have 2 victims right now that have been transported to the hospital with gunshot wounds. And as of right now, there is not believed to be a threat to the public. This is a situation that is contained to this property in Brooksville, north of State Road 50, east of Weeki Wachee. So hopefully that provides everybody with a little bit of context here. Yeah, I see a lot of people that are just now finding our stream. And so, look, folks, we're not going to be on live stream forever tonight. Reason being is because this is a situation that could very well take a long time for deputies to process and to navigate through. So we also too don't have the ability to fly. There is I don't know if a TFR has been established, but authorities put out an advisory asking media not to fly overhead. Okay, why do they do that? Very simply because if we're live streaming a feed from above the house, that can give precious strategic information away, strategic information that is sensitive to law enforcement, that can be available to a suspect or suspects inside of the home if they are bringing up Facebook Live or they find the live feed in any capacity. That gives them information. And so an advisory was put out to not fly over the area. We are not flying over the area. We do have the ground shot here that is from the perimeter, but it is well beyond the actual house where this is all unfolding, is well beyond this perimeter. This is a very wide perimeter that has been established. DJ wants to know here if I think it'll end peacefully. I certainly hope so. I certainly hope it'll end peacefully. And again, at this time, it is believed to be just the suspect, that suspect being Steven Ruza, inside of the home. His condition is in large part unknown at this time. We don't know exactly how he's doing. And so this is about preventing further loss of life. And so deputies are trained, investigators, detectives are trained to diffuse this situation without any further incident. And so what they will try to do is try to talk Steven Ruza into a peaceful surrender, if possible. I have been told now, this just coming in, I was going to hop off live stream, but I've been told that there is an update. It's an update that's going to be coming in 10 minutes' time. Another press conference has been called in Hernando County, so there might be an update from the Hernando County Sheriff's Office, a noteworthy update. Again, let's go here live. And show you, this is the live picture that we have from the scene. That is one of our reporters there by the name of Justin Schecker, who's trying to stay dry. So 10 minutes time. So, and that is news that came in about 2 minutes ago. So, for those of you joining us here on the East Coast, that will be 8:35. We'll carry that press conference here live on WFLA now. Interesting that the press conference was called so soon after the previous one wrapped up. The press conference was at approximately 7:55 or so. So about half an hour. Yeah, no, we can say almost exactly half an hour after the start of that press conference, the first press conference, another one has been called. I'll tell you that that's relatively uncommon for press conferences. Press conferences with active situations such as this one, they are usually spaced out. Look at this. We've got now 2 more sheriff's office vehicles. That is likely an unmarked sheriff's office vehicle, or this could be an escort for a resident who is living beyond the perimeter that's been established here as well. But that's a lot of vehicles for the escorting of one resident. So 4 deputy cruisers and 1 pickup truck that just went beyond the perimeter here. And again, residents have been encouraged to stay inside their homes. It's for their own safety, of course. If something were to happen where the suspect were to somehow exit the building, you don't want him firing any stray shots that are able to reach any other adjacent properties. So, but there's also, if this perimeter has been established, there are homes that are within this perimeter too that, of course, you have to be very cognizant. People are live inside these homes, and so if somebody is just trying to get to their family, that's why I was wondering if that was a possible resident being escorted beyond the perimeter. But it appeared to be a pretty long line of cars there. That's Justin Schecker again. If you're just joining us, another press conference has been scheduled for 8:35, roughly 8:35 Eastern Time, 7:35 Central, depending on where you're joining us from. JB here with you live on WFLA Now in the WFLA Now Stream Center, where we are monitoring again just a developing situation with a suspect that has barricaded inside of a Brooksville home after he is accused of shooting 2 people and setting a fire as well at this home in Brooksville. So we're hoping to get an update. We're hoping it's the type of update that you want to hear as far as it being a peaceful resolution to the scene. This shot just coming into the Stream Center, and it is the media staging area that has been set up. The media staging area is a safe location for reporters to receive updates from law enforcement officials. Justin Checker reporting live. Let's listen.
Toward the scene. It was followed a few moments later by several deputy vehicles. It appeared some deputies from a Citrus County Sheriff's Office have come down to support this effort. Again, this all started with the shots fired, reports of a fire on 5 o'clock this afternoon. When deputies arrived, they found at least 2 gunshot victims. Now the focus has shifted from a rescue operation to try and negotiate a peaceful surrender with the suspect. The sheriff has identified him as 64-year-old Steve Russa. Again, they used a drone to go into the home to confirm that he was indeed barricaded inside that property. The sheriff saying at this point the threat to the public is no more, but obviously there is still a major law enforcement response happening right now in Brooksville, as again we saw an armored SWAT vehicle and several more deputy vehicles head down Star Road toward Irma Road. So again, we're going to stand on scene here. This is the closest we can get to that situation. Again, deputies want this man to surrender peacefully. They're attempting to establish communication to negotiate a surrender. Again, this suspect, Steve Russa, is considered armed and dangerous. Live in Brooksville, I'm Justin Checker, 8 on your side.
Justin reporting for us tonight, and we'll be paying close attention to what Justin has to share, even though really we're all honed in on this scene in particular, this feed rather. This is the feed from the media staging area where, again, the sheriff is expected to speak. The scheduled start time 3 minutes from now, 3 minutes from we're presently 8:32 Eastern time. In the meantime, I'll try to answer some questions here using hashtag KJB in the Facebook Live, YouTube Live comment section. Really hopeful that that this is a situation that has been resolved without any further loss of, or not, I don't want to say any further loss of life, without any further violence. Because again, we have the two injured individuals that are being treated at the hospital for gunshot wounds. Christy on Facebook Live, hashtag KJB, do we know if he hurt family members or was it random? So we don't know the relationship, if there is a relationship between the suspect and the victims. That, of course, will come out in time, with it being as active of an investigation that it is. We don't have any information on even the age of the victims in this case. We don't know if they are elderly or middle aged or younger. So this is all when it's this active of a situation. A lot of these details, it can take some time for them to come out, but we might get that information here momentarily. And of course, we're hoping for the very best for those victims in this case. People asking, why did this happen? What the motive is? Why somebody, fires shots, injures 2, and also sets a fire and then barricades himself inside of a home. We don't know if this is a mental health situation. We don't know if this is a domestic violence related situation. We don't know if this is an act that is in large part random. This is, again, hopefully we're going to get some answers here momentarily. Yeah. 5 minutes from now. Yeah. Thank you. Did they push back the press conference or no? Okay. So press conference is still scheduled to start at any moment. That's Vladimir, one of our Spanish language reporters here in Tampa. Great guy. So we hope to have, Donna was asking, could this be domestic violence? Could this be a person with mental health issues? Don't know. What's interesting about that is that so often is that the case these days when it comes to shootings, when it comes to a heavy law enforcement presence, a heavy law enforcement response to how many times do you hear on the news, oh, it's such a quiet neighborhood, this could never happen here, and so many times you find out later that it is domestic violence related, or it's somebody experiencing a mental health episode, to the point now where we cover these stories, and that's the first comments that we get from people asking, is this mental health related? Is this something domestic that occurred within this house in relation to this family? What has transpired here? Could it be a combination of both? How many times do you hear about it being a mental health episode in relation to domestic problems, to problems with a family inside of a home? So it's just so common now. It's too common for people to, where people just, it's on the tip of our tongues now, where people just automatically assume that it has something to do with one of those two or both. But we'll hopefully get some answers, folks, in the next couple of minutes. The time now, 8:36. Sheriff Al Nienhuis, Hernando County Sheriff, who has been giving us periodic updates on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. The moment that he steps up to the makeshift podium here, steps up to these microphones, we'll listen in and we'll bring you, of course, coverage afterwards as we process the very latest from the Hernando County Sheriff's Office. Heather brings up a really good question. Were all the cars that pulled in from Citrus County, or was it our sheriff? They were pulling in so quickly, Heather. I didn't see, usually the signage or really the vinyl on the side of sheriff's deputy or sheriff's vehicles. Usually it's in big words, it's the word sheriff, right? And then usually it's in smaller print, you'll see the county: Hernando County, Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, Pasco County, Polk County, Citrus County. And so it was going by so fast, I didn't really see whether or not it was Hernando or Citrus. Why would there be, if it was Citrus County, and Justin said that it was Citrus County, why would there be Citrus County vehicles pulling up? It could be, additional deputies just offering their assistance. So many times you will hear sheriff's offices collaborate across county lines. Sometimes it comes down to resources. Sometimes it comes down to equipment and technology. Sometimes a particular sheriff's office will have something that an adjacent county's sheriff's office doesn't have. So you'll be transporting technology a lot. It could be a lot of different things. Maybe we'll get some answers in this update when we have Sheriff Al Nienhuis speaking here momentarily. Mark Davis saying on Facebook Live, #KJB, this is right up the street from me. Lots of law enforcement here right now. We've been talking to people in the area, people in the Brooksville area, and people who have been telling our reporters on the ground that they have never seen such a heavy law enforcement presence. Now, the reason for the heavy law enforcement presence is because this was reported initially. This was an advisory put out to the media as an active shooter situation. That, of course, means that there's the potential threat to the public, and so the law enforcement presence, it's going to be all hands on deck as far as law enforcement in the area rushing to that location to try to assist, bring a suspect or suspects into custody, as well as just keep the general public safe. So that's what it was initially. So that was the reason for the heavy law enforcement presence. And as we understand it, it is still a very heavy law enforcement presence at the perimeter, beyond the perimeter, because, of course, we have the barricaded suspect who has, at this moment, we don't know whether or not he has surrendered, but as of the most recent update, was barricaded inside the home in Brooksville. They have turned off the light here. Now, that's just to conserve battery. Reporters, or photojournalists rather, reporters won't be doing this too often. But photographers, what they'll do is they'll shut off the lights until law enforcement officials show up, because they don't want the battery to run out mid-press conference. So that's why the scene here is dark. We no longer in the stream center here have a feed of the perimeter that was established. If that shot does come back, I will go back to that here live. But what we'll do here in the stream center is show you Stephen Russa. This is the man who deputies believe is barricaded inside of the home. They believe that he is responsible for shooting 2 people this evening, also responsible for setting a fire there at the property in Brooksville. So I believe it was extreme acts was the quote from Sheriff Al Nienhuis. And what we'll try to do is, of course, provide some more clarity once we have Sheriff Nienhuis speaking here live at the media staging area in Brooksville in Hernando County, Florida. People wanting to know exactly where Brooksville is. You're not going to see it on a wide map of the continental U.S. It is not a major city. It is a town that is north of Tampa. It's part of the Tampa Bay area, but it is north of Tampa Bay itself in Hernando County. It's north of Pasco County, which some people might recognize Newport Richey, Land O'Lakes, some of the towns, of course, that you'll find in Pasco County. It's north. Really, I mean, it's even west of the center of really Brooksville itself. It's really between Brooksville and Weeki Wachee. We're talking north of State Road 50, between 589, which is Suncoast Parkway. To our commenters saying on YouTube Live that it is west and south of Orlando, it's actually directly west of Orlando, almost on a straight line west of Orlando. But it is not close to Orlando by any means. Mark Davis saying he was commenting earlier about the area because he said that this is right up the street from where he is. He says this area is usually quiet, but now that it's like now it's like the Wild West. Christy wants to know #KJB. So this all took place at the home. It's believed to have taken place in the area of the home, whether or not this was all unfolding inside the house or whether it was happening outside and on the property itself. That's something that hopefully will become more clear with this next press conference as well. Again, JB here with you live, folks, on WFLA Now. We're now at approximately 8:45, and that's about 10 minutes past what we were expecting, the expected start time for this next press conference, a very sudden press conference that was called by the Hernando County Sheriff's Office less than half an hour after a previous press conference. Another one was called very suddenly, and so that usually means that there has been a significant update of some kind. What update they are going to provide is unclear at this time. That's why they have press conferences, to announce updates. We have not heard from anybody. We have several teams, I think 3 teams on the ground there in Hernando County tonight. None of them have been given any heads up as to what this update is going to be, but it is going to be an update on the situation that is unfolding in Brooksville. Why? Nick wants to know, did they call off the press conference? Why the delay? So this is actually very common when it comes to active situations like this, because there could be a lot of different reasons as to why the press conference is now 10 minutes late and why we don't have it at the expected start time of 8:35. Could be more details unfolding. Could be the sheriff receiving more information. Various detectives that have been working the case could be providing him with some additional context. And then also, too, they could be getting off the phone with the hospital, getting some updates on the condition of, because really, I mean, people want to know how the victims are doing. That is something that is so very important when it comes to these press conferences. Is there any update on the victims? And so there's a lot of different reasons as to why there could be the delay to the press conference, but those are just a couple of possible reasons. Reading comments here. I see David is joining us. Cassandra is joining us. Josephine is joining us on YouTube Live, on Facebook Live. We've got Mark, Marielle, Cindy, Audrey, Charlotte, Matt. A lot of folks joining us here, awaiting this press conference that should be beginning any moment in Brooksville, in Hernando County, where, again, a suspect is barricaded inside of a home. 2 people injured by this suspect, according to the Hernando County Sheriff's Office. Fire set as well. A very chaotic scene in Brooksville this evening. And so all the attention has been paid to the 2 victims in the hospital that have been hospitalized, but also to the suspect and the current situation with this suspect. The last that we had heard, a drone was sent in to establish some form of communication with the suspect. Again, the suspect is believed to be this man here, Stephen Russo. But we have not really heard much since then. But really, it was about roughly 15 minutes after the end of this press conference that we began this live stream with that a second press conference was called. The expected start time was 8:35. It is now 8:47. So we are awaiting this press conference from taking place. It should be taking place here any moment in Brooksville. The reason it's so dark is because the media staging area doesn't have lighting. Our photographers, of course, have brought their own lights, but they're not going to drain the battery on those lights when they need those lights, of course, for the press conference getting underway. So that's why the shot is so dark. As soon as Sheriff Al Ninhai shows up to the media staging area and is ready for the press conference to begin, our photographers will fire up the lights and we'll listen in here on WFLA Now. Jackie, I see your report about SWAT on Facebook Live. And while I'm never going to tell somebody on Facebook Live that they're wrong, you could be the neighbor right across the street from where this is all happening. I can't tell you that you're wrong, but what I can tell you is that I can't report that information. But that's interesting if that's true. I appreciate you sharing. Again, you can use hashtag HeyJB, and if you're trying to get my attention, we can animate comments on screen as we, again, await Sheriff Al Ninhai speaking here tonight in Hernando County. Allow me to say, with it being Friday night, hope everybody has an excellent weekend, a safe weekend, wherever you're watching from. Of course, here on the internet, we have people that join us from Tampa Bay, from Central Florida, from across the state of Florida, from across the country, from really around the world. People will be joining us from a lot of different places. So wherever you're joining us from, happy Friday to you, and hope that you have a happy, healthy, and safe weekend as we await Sheriff Al Ninhai speaking here momentarily from the Hernando County sheriff's office staging area that has been set up tonight. I'm going to check to see if there's been any update that's come in. And there has not been. So lights have just come on. That's usually a very good sign. And that likely means that there's some activity here. Here's Sheriff Al Nienhuis. Let's listen in.
Oh, okay. Okay, you ready? Okay, good evening. I've got a little bit more information and update. The situation has been resolved. A little more information about how it transpired. I talked to a couple of my detectives at the command post, and again, very preliminary information is that an individual who was at the scene told us that our suspect had started the barn on fire, and when neighbors came over to assist, not knowing why or how the barn was on fire, and apparently the suspect had been firing a gun throughout the day, but just target practicing, not necessarily shooting at any person or anything other than targets. So the individual told us that when the neighbors came over to try to help, he actually he had been depressed and acting strangely, and actually started shooting at the individual who lived on the property and the neighbors. The individual who lived at the property actually evacuated one of the neighbors. The other neighbor is the one who was on the scene that we had to tactically extract during the confrontation. As I told you earlier, we confirmed he was in the house and that he was moving about the house. Hostage negotiators got close and tried to make contact with him. He completely refused to acknowledge our existence or in any way communicate with us. At least that's the initial information we got. We tried over and over and over again, and he just would not acknowledge. So we went to try to take him into custody. I'm not sure exactly what transpired. We're still going to have to talk to the deputies because the deputies on the scene are still at the house and finishing up a search of the house and so forth. But preliminary information is at least 2 deputies fired their weapons. We're not sure yet if the suspect fired his, and the suspect is down. I'm not going to release his condition just yet until he gets a little bit more information. But the situation is totally resolved at this point. The suspect is no longer a threat and is been taken into custody. So, I don't know if I can answer any other questions. Again, give you a little more information about what happened prior to us getting there. But again, that's very preliminary, and detectives are in the process now of trying to do a neighborhood canvass and double check that all the neighbors are accounted for and get any information they may have about what transpired just prior to and during the shooting. So
what's the message for the community at this point?
Well, the message to the community at this point is that especially this particular area, there is no more danger. The individual is no longer a threat. We definitely believe we have all the victims accounted for. And so at this time, the situation is resolved. Unfortunately, we could not resolve it peacefully. There were shots fired, and as we get more information about exactly what happened with the interaction with deputies, we'll be releasing that. FDLE was actually already on the scene, an agent, a representative, along with the state fire marshal and ATF. We had several representatives from several different agencies here, so the process is going to be very long to go through doing the investigation with the fire, as well as the deputy involved shooting with FDLE. They'll be taking over that portion of the investigation. But as I said, there was actually an FDLE agent on scene during the latter part of this event. So
to clarify the initial interaction, he set the barn on fire and people just came over to try to help, and he shot at those people?
That's our preliminary information, yes. It was almost as though, You know, again, I haven't talked to the individual, and so I don't know, and I haven't talked with any of the witnesses, but it almost appears as though he either did not want them to extinguish the fire, or it was set deliberately to lure people in to shoot them. Of course, we may never know exactly what was going through his mind at the time.
Just to clarify, he was shot by deputies?
He was shot by deputies, yes.
Did that happen after they made entry into the house, or?
Well, we had initially breached as I told you earlier, we had breached and sent some electronic surveillance in and determined that he was still inside. And then we tried to use some other methods to try to get him to come out. I've heard a couple different issues. Maybe he had come out on the porch and confronted deputies, but again, that's extremely preliminary. I wanted to let everybody know that it has been resolved, and as we get more information about exactly what happens, working with FDLE and the state attorney's office, we'll get that information out just as quick as we can. The more specifics about our interaction with him at the very end.
Did he point or present a firearm at deputies?
I'm sorry?
Did he point or present a firearm?
Again, that would be an assumption on my part if I told you that, because I haven't talked with those deputies. All I know is that preliminarily, the commander told me that we believe at least 2 deputies fired their weapons. Again, I'm not even sure. He may have fired on the deputies, but I don't know that yet.
And Sheriff, you said the suspect is being brought into custody. Can you clarify if that's jail or the hospital?
Again, I'm not going to release his condition just yet. We have some other things we have to do before that, but suffice it to say that he is no longer a threat to the community. So.
Any update on that second victim that you didn't have a condition for yet?
No, I asked just as I'd left, and I haven't got any information that it has gotten any worse. But the second victim was pretty serious when he was taken out of here.
And this area has been locked off. You mentioned residents were evacuated. What's the status of that now?
Well, we're going to be working towards getting things at least in the general area back to normal, letting people get back to their houses after we interview them to see if they have any information about what transpired. But again, there is absolutely no threat to the community from this particular scene. We will likely be holding the scene overnight and either start processing it now or working with FDLE to do the processing in the morning at first light. Okay.
How frustrating is that neighbors rushed to help and then were the victims of this crime?
Yeah, how quickly?
Or how frustrating is
Oh, how frustrating. Yes, absolutely. And I think, again, we talked about active shooter, and I didn't know exactly what the sequence. I did know the barn was on fire. I didn't know it happened prior to them being shot or at the same time or after. But if it was set intentionally to lure people over, and to cause more victims, that's very frustrating, and it just goes to show that even when you're trying to do a good deed, if somebody is either seriously mentally ill or has criminal intent, you have to be very careful. So.
Are you able to clarify if the victims are men or women?
There's the victims that have gone to the hospital. I think the first victim may have actually even been released already, the one that self-evacuated. But there was a man and a woman. The woman is the one that was self-evacuated, and the man is the one that's still in hospital. Can't release any more than that for Marcy's Law reasons. Okay. All right, thank you all very much. Just pay attention to our social media feed and media releases, and if there's any additional information that we can get approved to be released from FDLE and the state attorney's office, we'll get it out to you as soon as we can. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Sheriff Al.
Voy, espera un momento, ¿ok?
Sheriff Al Nienhuis speaking here, giving an update about half an hour after the previous press conference in Hernando County. Just we'll get into here in a moment how this all began, because I think that was perhaps the most eyebrow-raising component to this press conference. Excuse me. But the suspect is down, taken down, of course, by deputies who did discharge their firearms in this case. Two deputies firing their weapons after the drone that made entry to the home where this suspect, Stephen Russo, was barricaded. That drone was unable to establish communication with him because, according to Nienhuis, the suspect here refused to acknowledge officers or deputies in any sense. So here's the way that Nienhuis describes it. At some point this afternoon, at this property in Hernando County, in Brooksville, the man on here on the right side of your screen, Stephen Russo, is accused of starting a barn fire, a barn fire that started to get a lot of attention from people in the area. Now, exactly why he started this fire, according to Nienhuis, is unknown, but that he was also firing shots in the area at the same time. That was believed to be perhaps target practice. But when the suspect started the barn fire, people came over to assist. And Nienhuis, in his words, describing that he either didn't want people to extinguish the fire or he wanted to attract attention. For whatever reason that he had for starting this barn fire, he got into a confrontation with some of the people that noticed this and actually came over to the property to figure out what was going on. And then, of course, you have shots being fired, a man and a woman injured, one person more seriously than the other. But of course, a very chaotic situation that was marked by perhaps what Nienhuis is describing as a mental health episode. We were talking about whether or not there was a mental health component to this case before this press conference. The word was depressed that Nienhuis used, that he was possibly experiencing depression. And that's, of course, leads into this confrontation that occurs on the property when we have two people that are shot allegedly by Stephen Russo. They, of course, tried to use the drone to talk him into surrendering, but he was not able to comply, not able to acknowledge deputies that were trying to talk some sense into him, I'm sure. And then, of course, we have him being taken into custody as a result of two deputies firing their weapons upon making entry to the home itself. You don't ever want to see a situation like this resolve with further use of weapons, but in this case, and of course, there will have to be a subsequent investigation, and of course, we'll be following along here to find out more. But deputies made entryway to the home tonight, encountered the suspect. They did not say whether or not Stephen Russo was armed. That, of course, information will come out. Why the deputies fired their weapons will, of course, come out in a subsequent police report. Why they felt that it was necessary for them to fire their weapons, and whether or not they felt that their life was in danger in this moment, in this encounter with the suspect. But just the entire situation a bit bizarre in how it started with this barn fire that was allegedly set by the man here on the right side of your screen, the suspect in this case, and then, of course, people paying attention to it, and that leading to a confrontation as to why the barn was on fire to begin with. Just a very bizarre beginning to this story, and an unfortunate ending. And we can only hope, of course, that the injuries do not culminate in a fatality in this case, both in regard to the one suspect who's the one victim that is more seriously injured, and of course now the suspect in this case being injured by deputy gunfire as well. I'll do my very best to answer some final questions before we hop off here on this live stream. I'm seeing a lot of people commenting about mental health in our comment sections. We talk about it all the time here on stream about how common it is for these stories to have a mental health component of some kind, a mental health breakdown of some kind. If you use hashtag HeyJB with your comment, I can animate your comment on screen, or I can acknowledge it out of the Facebook Live or YouTube Live comment section. We'll be wrapping up our live stream here in the next couple of minutes now that the situation has been resolved. But again, the very latest on this story on WFLA.com, the WFLA app, the latest coming up tonight on your NBC station here in Tampa Bay, Florida. WFLA News Channel 8, your 11 o'clock newscast coming up in less than 2 hours from now. Facebook, not seeing too much. We'll go over here to YouTube Live. Kayla, #AJ, was the shed on fire and that caused the injured victims to go check it out? And no, as it was described by the sheriff, Kayla, so the barn was on fire. That caused a significant amount of attention. Neighbors, people who were paying attention in the area came over to the property. There was some form of a confrontation, and then we have the allegation of shots being fired and 2 people struck by gunfire. That's the way it was described by Neen Heiss. Lorraine with a good question. #KJB, were there animals in the barn? We can't say that there were. We should ask more questions about animals when it comes to stories like these. Of course, there's always an emphasis placed on people, both from a suspect standpoint and a victim standpoint. Whether or not there were animals in the barn, whether or not it was an active barn, or whether it was a barn that was, that was mostly empty. That wasn't something that came up in this press conference, but it's an excellent question, Lorraine. Also, too, were there animals inside the home where Ruza was said to be barricaded as well? Megan McQueen, #KJB, a mental health component and a gun component. Whether or not he was said to have multiple firearms, whether or not these firearms were legally allowed to be his, what his criminal history looks like, if there is a criminal history, whether or not he was legally allowed to possess these firearms. All of these questions fair to ask in the aftermath of what has unfolded tonight in Brooksville. Not seeing too much other questions, comments. Jennifer says, #JB, thank you for your coverage. Go home, enjoy your weekend, sir. I encourage everybody here to have a happy, healthy, and safe weekend. It's been a little bit of time since I was last on stream. So it's good to see all of you joining us here on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, interacting with us live here on WFLA Now. The very latest on this story, it's on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. We'll have the very latest for you tonight on air tonight as well. And also, too, you can follow me on my social media accounts at WFLAJB. I'm really paying a lot of attention these days to Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter, and all for different reasons. All those platforms have their respective strengths. Of course, I'm here live with you as well on YouTube. We do a lot of our live streaming activity here on YouTube as well. It's really those 5. On YouTube, you can follow us here at WFLA News Channel 8, and then on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, you can find me at WFLAJB, where I post a lot of different content on different platforms at different times, because social media and all these different platforms are so unique in their own ways. And it's about connecting with those audiences in the way that is just best for those respective platforms. So I hope everybody has a terrific weekend, a happy, healthy, safe a weekend wherever you are watching us from. We are really going to pay very close attention to this story, and as we get updates, we're going to share them on air and online. Again, the headquarters for all of Florida's biggest headlines, breaking news alerts. It's WFLA.com. Thanks so much for joining us, folks, and we'll see you next time here on WFLA Now. Have an excellent weekend.